My name is Daniel Cross. I am 60 years old today. For most of my life, I believed in one simple thing, that love, trust, and loyalty were the pillars of any marriage. I met Evelyn when I was just 24. She had golden hair, bright green eyes, and a smile that could light up any room. Back then, I was just a junior accountant working long hours for almost no pay. But Evelyn, she made me feel like I was the luckiest man alive. We got married after 2 years of dating. I promised her that I would give her everything she ever wanted, and I meant it. Every raise I received, every promotion I earned, every late night I spent in the office, it was all for her. When she wanted a house in the suburbs, I worked overtime to make the down payment. When she dreamed of vacations in Europe, I skipped buying a new car so she could see Paris. And when she said she wanted her own boutique, I emptied my savings account to make it happen. For 30 years, I built my life around Evelyn's happiness. She didn't have to worry about bills, about stress, about anything. I carried it all. But slowly, things began to change. Evelyn's gratitude turned into expectation. The woman who once held my hand tightly in crowded streets now scrolled through her phone when I spoke. The dinners that used to be filled with laughter turned into silence, broken only by her sighs of boredom. I thought maybe it was me. Maybe I wasn't giving enough, so I tried harder. I surprised her with gifts, booked more vacations, even supported her when she said she wanted to explore herself with new hobbies and new friends. But what I didn't see back then was this. Evelyn was drifting away. And while I was busy building her dreams, she was secretly planning a future that didn't include me. It happened on a night I'll never forget. My retirement party. After 35 years of loyal service to the same company, I had finally stepped down as chief accountant. My colleagues threw me a small celebration, but Evelyn insisted we have another one at home, a special family gathering, she called it. I was excited. I thought it would be a night of love, laughter, and new beginnings. Our son, Andrew, and daughter Sophia were both there, smiling. Evelyn looked radiant in her red dress. For a moment, I felt like the luckiest man alive again. But then, she stood up. In her hands was a brown envelope. She walked toward me, her heels clicking on the wooden floor, her smile sharp and cold. "Daniel," she said, "I have a retirement gift for you." I opened the envelope, and my heart froze. Divorce papers. The words swam in front of my eyes: irreconcilable differences, division of assets, alimony. I looked up at Evelyn in shock. My voice barely worked. "What is this?" She leaned close and whispered, "I don't want to waste the best years of my life taking care of an old retiree. You understand, don't you?" I turned to my children, Andrew and Sophia. Surely they would be outraged, confused, supportive. But instead, they avoided my eyes. Andrew shifted uncomfortably. Sophia bit her lip. "You knew?" I asked them. Andrew shrugged. "Dad, Mom deserves to be happy, and we need to think about the future, too." Sophia nodded softly. "It's better this way." The room spun around me. My wife of 35 years, my children, my pride, my life, all of them had betrayed me. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply folded the papers and put them in my pocket. "I'll sign," I said. The party went on as if nothing had happened. Evelyn laughed with a man I didn't recognize, a tall, well-dressed stranger with a smug smile. My children whispered to each other, already dreaming of the money they thought they'd soon control. But they had underestimated me. They thought I was weak, an old man ready to be discarded. They forgot that for 35 years I wasn't just a husband or a father. I was also a numbers man, a strategist, a survivor. And I would prove it to them. 3 days later, I signed the papers. Evelyn got the house, half of our savings, a sizable alimony. The kids got access to a trust fund I had created years ago. They thought they had won. But I knew something they didn't. For years, quietly, secretly, I had been preparing for this moment. Offshore accounts, investments under different names, properties they didn't know existed. I wasn't just giving them half of my wealth, I was giving them half of what I allowed them to see. Once the ink dried, I disappeared. Not dramatically, no vanishing act, but I canceled my phone, deleted my social media, and drove across the country to a small cabin I had bought in Oregon years earlier. Life was quiet. Lonely at first. The nights felt endless. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., hearing Evelyn's words in my head, "I don't want an old retiree." But slowly, something shifted. I began hiking the trails every morning, cooking for myself, reading books I never had time for. I set up a small office in the cabin with 3 monitors, a fiber optic line, and my old laptop. Using my decades of financial experience, I started day trading. At first, it was just a distraction, but soon the numbers began to grow. $10,000 became $30,000. $30,000 became $100,000. My instincts, sharpened by decades of reading balance sheets, were still alive, stronger than ever. Within a year, I had rebuilt what Evelyn thought she had taken. Within 3, I had tripled it. I was no longer Daniel Cross, the discarded husband. I was Daniel Cross, reborn. Daniel had lost everything. The wife he adored had left him. The house he built with his own hands was no longer his, and even his son had turned his back on him. For weeks, his life was a fog of sorrow. He wandered the empty streets at night, ate cheap instant noodles in a cracked bowl, and woke each morning with no reason to rise. But life has a strange way of revealing strength in the most broken, but of souls. One morning, Daniel found himself sitting on a park bench. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, and his eyes hollow. He watched as people rushed past him. Young men in suits, women in dresses, children laughing on. Swings. For the first time in years, he saw life not as a provider, not as a husband or father, but simply as a man who had been discarded. And in that moment, something inside him whispered, "This is not the end." Daniel had always been a builder, not of walls and roofs, but of futures. He had built Rachel's comfort, Matthew's childhood, his family's entire existence. Now, he decided, he would build his own future. The journey began painfully. He took on odd jobs at first, sweeping floors, delivering packages, fixing leaky pipes. His back ached, his hands blistered, but each dollar he earned carried a weight of dignity. One evening, while repairing a neighbor's old computer, Daniel discovered something surprising. He still had the sharpness of mind that once made him a brilliant engineer. Years of managing household finances, fixing appliances, and solving problems had sharpened his practical skills. Slowly, he began offering small repair services around the neighborhood. Word spread. People began to trust him. His kindness and honesty attracted loyal customers. Within a year, Daniel had built a modest repair shop. The sign above the door read, "Daniel's Fix-It Corner. Honest work, honest price." It wasn't glamorous, but it was his. For the first time in years, Daniel smiled without pain. He greeted every customer with warmth, repaired their items with care, and earned enough not just to survive, but to live. He began saving again, not for anyone else, but for himself. One day, a customer named Sophia walked in. She was a widowed teacher, gentle and kind, carrying a broken radio. Their first conversation was simple, but her eyes held compassion, something Daniel hadn't seen in years. She returned again and again, not just for repairs, but for conversations. Slowly, a friendship blossomed. For the first time since Rachel's betrayal, Daniel felt seen, not as a provider, not as a failure, but as a man. As years passed, Daniel's business expanded. He hired assistants, rented a bigger space, and even launched an online platform teaching young people how to repair everyday things. He became a mentor, a guide, a symbol of resilience in his community. Daniel, the man who had been stripped of everything, was now standing taller than ever before. He had rebuilt his life from ashes. And while his world grew brighter, somewhere far away, Rachel's world began to crumble. Rachel had thought she was stepping into paradise when she left Daniel. Her new partner, a man named Victor, showered her with gifts, wine, vacations, and promises of endless joy. For a while, she lived like a queen. She flaunted her wealth, laughed at Daniel's misfortune, and believed karma was on her side. But paradise built on betrayal never lasts. Victor's charm soon faded. His generosity turned into control. He wasn't the dream man she imagined, but a selfish gambler who lived off her money. The assets she had taken from Daniel began to vanish. The savings were drained, the house mortgaged, the luxuries sold one by one. Rachel tried to keep up appearances. She posted pictures on social media, smiling beside Victor, pretending her life was perfect. But behind closed doors, the arguments grew louder, the bills piled higher, and the loneliness dug deeper. Eventually, Victor left her for someone younger, leaving Rachel with nothing but debts. She reached out to old friends, but they had seen her true colors and turned away. Even her son Matthew, now grown, was struggling financially and blamed her for encouraging him to despise his father. The once proud queen was now sitting in a cramped apartment, staring at empty bottles, surrounded by unpaid bills. Her beauty faded, her laughter disappeared, and her arrogance melted into regret. And every night, when silence echoed through the walls, one name haunted her: Daniel. It had been 5 long years since Daniel had been cast, aside like garbage. In that time, he had rebuilt himself into a man stronger than ever. His shop had turned into a successful company, his online platform had gained thousands of followers, and his friendship with Sophia had blossomed into love. He was no longer the broken man begging for affection. He was fulfilled, respected, and at peace. And then, one evening, as rain poured outside his office window, there was a knock on the door. Daniel opened it, and there stood Rachel. Her once glamorous figure was now worn down, her eyes sunken, her hands trembling. She looked nothing like the woman who had humiliated him years ago. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice cracking, I need your help." For a long moment, Daniel simply stared. And here, memories flooded his mind. The divorce papers, the courtroom humiliation, the empty apartment. He could have slammed the door. He could have laughed. He could have taken revenge. But instead, Daniel spoke calmly, with a strength she had never seen before. "You took everything from me, Rachel. You destroyed me. But in doing so, you gave me something far greater. You forced me to find myself." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Please, I have nowhere else to go." Daniel looked at her with pity, not love. "I forgave you a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't mean return. My life has moved on. You made your choices, and now you must live with them." With that, he gently closed the door. Rachel stood in the rain, sobbing, realizing that the man she had once mocked was now untouchable, beyond her reach. Karma had spoken. Inside, Daniel turned to Sophia, who had watched the encounter silently. She touched his hand, and he smiled, not with bitterness, but with peace. The broken man had risen. The betrayer had fallen. And the lesson was clear. Those who betray may laugh today, but tomorrow it is they who will weep.